So let's dial in. Welcome everyone to the Buddhist Path of Awakening course. We are working our way through Shantideva's The Way of the Bodhisattva. And we are now doing the second part of chapter 5. Mike, I will lead off today and then Michael will close, he'll finish. So we're starting with verse 48. Michael did this last week, but there's a reason that I'm going to recap it, which is in this last section, from 48 to the end, there are 4 major divisions. The first one is about not causing harm, and that's verses 48 to 54. The second is gathering virtue, and that's verses 55 to 82. The third has to do with benefiting others, and that's verses 83 to 107. And finally, the conclusion, verses 108 and 9. So I will do not causing harm and gathering virtue. Is this right, Barry? Michael, then I'm going to go up to verse 82. Is that what you remember?
Yes.
All right. And then Michael will finish. So, the first verse in this section, not causing harm, reads, would somebody like to read? Here we go. Carolyn. You're muted, Carolyn.
And I can't see anything to read.
Uh-oh.
The share screen. Yeah.
No words.
Maybe anybody who would like, people who would like to read, put your little hand symbol up, and then I can.
Okay.
I can call on you.
You see it now, Carolyn?
Yeah, I can. What verse do you want me to read?
Yes.
Starting at 47?
No, we're starting with 48.
Okay. When the urge arises in your mind to feelings of desire or hate or angry hate, do not act, be silent, do not speak, and like a log of wood, be sure to stay.
So this is the advice of how to handle the different emotions, the kleshas, anger in this instance. And the constant advice is be like a log of wood. Do not speak, and like a log of wood, be sure to stay. Okay, who would like to read the next? Here we go, we got hands up,
Philip.
Good. Philip Russell.
When your mind is wild or filled with mockery,
or
filled with pride and haughty arrogance, or when you would expose another's secret guilt, to bring up old dissensions, or to act deceitfully.
Keep going. Keep going, Philip.
When you want to fish for praise, or criticize and spoil another's name, or use harsh language, sparring for a fight, it's then that like a log you should remain.
So Shantideva is addressing the state of mind on the verge of emotional intensity, the verge of getting carried away. To remain like a log requires first self-awareness. Usually we're so caught up in the klesha, the emotion, that we don't even know what we're doing. We can't reflect on it. But so what this requires is a increase in mindfulness, that we can see where we are and what we're doing. And then we can remain like a log. First, self-awareness. Second, self-control. This is what is being enjoined. There are 4 places that we can interrupt a klesha, a powerful urge. It could be an urge of lust. It could be an urge of anger. It could be an urge of jealousy. It could be an urge of feeling deprived and hungry. All these different emotions, the kleshas, that are embodied in the 6 realms. So there are 4 places we can interrupt this powerful urge. First is at the pre-verbal level. You just feel it beginning. And then you identify that and like a log remain, stay. The second is when the thoughts are still small. And again, it requires that you be able to identify this and like a log remain. The third is when thoughts have already ensnared us and we're completely caught in the story about this emotional situation. And again, interrupt it, let it go, and like a log remain. And the fourth is just before you act out. Get a grip, don't do it. And cut the storyline. The storyline is everything. When you cut the storyline, the energy of the emotion is still there, but briefly. It will evaporate. It's the storyline that keeps it alive. So, where are we? So we're on 51, I think. Hold on a second.
Yes, you'll want to scroll to 51.
Okay. Mark Eskenazi.
Sorry. Hi. And when you yearn for wealth, attention, fame, a circle of retainers serving you, and when you look for honors, whoa.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
I want you to read to 53.
All right, very good. And when you look for honors, recognition, it's then that like a log you shall remain. And when you are inclined to overlook another's need and want to get the best thing for yourself, and when you feel the urge to speak, it's then that like a log you shall remain.
Should.
Yeah, I thought I said should. Okay.
And one more.
Impatience, indolence, and indolence, yeah, faint-heartedness, and likewise arrogance and careless speech, attachment to your side. When these arise, it's then that like a log you should remain.
Yeah, in these verses, Shantideva gives us our strategies for trying to escape the underlying discomfort of Shenpa. You know, the Shenpa is the feeling of irritation that you want to get rid of this emotion one way or another. And Trungpa Rinpoche said that there are basically two ways that we get rid of an emotion. We either, neurotically, we either act it out, like if you're angry, you punch someone, or we try to suppress it. Either way is neurotic and won't really work. So he gives us here strategies. The strategy he's giving us is something different. It's like a log. We should remain, let go and stay still, mentally, physically, every way. So when we feel the need to do something, to brag, to gossip, to cower, anything to get away from the discomfort of the Shenpa, it just is so irritating to have it. With a steady mind, we can see these strategies and stop supporting or enacting them with our thoughts, emotions, and actions. But what it requires, and this is the hard part, is being conscious that you're having this emotion. A lot of the time, we're having it, and it's just like being lost in a dream at night. Remaining like a log is the practice, powerful, effective, and the easiest approach. It's a way to not to pour fuel on the fire and to get a clear view of what we would burn. All right, Henry, would you read verses 54 and 55?
Sure. Okay. Examine thus yourself from every side. Take note of your defilements and your pointless efforts. For thus the heroes on the Bodhisattva path seize firmly on such faults with proper remedies. With perfect and unyielding faith, with steadfastness, respect, and courtesy, with conscientiousness and awe, work calmly for the happiness of others.
This is the instruction. This is the instruction to achieve enlightenment, and to see, when we cultivate virtue, we're cultivating the qualities that accomplish the twofold benefit of benefiting oneself, because you calm down and you approach enlightenment, and benefiting others because you're not hurting them. So he says, well, the basic point is to note with awareness all our urges, thoughts, and strategies, and remain steady like a log. There are general instructions for gathering virtue, the qualities that lead us to enlightened mind, and this accomplishment of the twofold benefit of self and others. And these strategies or instructions include basic warmth, open-mindedness, qualities that connect us with others. There are the qualities of basic goodness, is what I've written here, which we often omit. Virtue in Tibetan, the word is gewa, is non-aggression, love, and compassion. Shantideva also lists faith. Eager faith wants to create the causes for contentment instead of misery. Confident faith is confidence in awakened divine, that we all have it, and that basic goodness is within us. So let's move on. Carolyn, could you read verse 56? You're muted, Carolyn.
I can't see it.
You can't see it. I'm sorry. I did.
Let us not be downcast by the warring wants of childish persons quarreling. Their thoughts are bred from conflict and emotion. Let us understand and treat them lovingly.
This verse makes it clear why we need to gather virtue, because it makes it possible for us to deal compassionately with each other. Childish is, Pema notes, is conveying for those who ignorantly strengthen the habits of suffering, us. The energy of negativity is very seductive. So Shantideva instructs us to diffuse it by understanding why people do what they do. And you can think of someone who has hurt you. This is what I did. And towards whom I bear resentment. And instead of doing that, which is all I do when I think of this individual, taking Shantideva's advice, I would try to understand why that person is who and what he or she is. It's better that we break the cycle of aggression and treat people with understanding. And as we do this, we begin to see how difficult it is to remain like a log. Okay. The next two verses. Who would like to read? Philip.
When acting irreproachably for our sake or the sake of others, let us always bear in mind the thought that we are selfless, like an apparition. This supreme freedom of a human life, so long awaited, now at last attained, reflecting always thus, maintain your mind as steady as Sumeru, king of mountains.
In ancient India, the geography of the world had a very large island in the middle of it, and it was divided into parts, and then there were islands surrounding it. It was all flat, of course. And in the center of that large island in the middle was the mountain Sumeru. So that's what that signifies. And actually from the top of Mount Sumeru, a river ran down into the ocean. That was supposed to be issuing from Shiva's brow. So when acting irreproachably, that means doing virtuous acts. Let us always bear in mind that the thought that we are selfless, like an apparition. So what this is an injunction to egolessness, which is going to be dealt with very much in more depth at the 9th chapter of the book. But still, the Buddhist teachings teach us that what we regard as a self is a fiction, just a creation in a story. And we should contemplate the Buddhist teachings that we are selfless, like an apparition. In the same vein, there's what's called the threefold purity. That's the consideration that the giver, the giving, and the recipient aren't really real. So when you commit an act of generosity, there's no feeling of prideful giving. Okay. And the next verse, I'm sorry. Reflecting on this, always maintain your mind as steady as Sumeru, king of mountains. And this has to do with the good fortune of being a human being, being born a human being, that we shouldn't waste this precious opportunity to awaken and appreciate our lives all the more. So in order to do that, we have to cultivate mindfulness and alertness, mindfulness and awareness. The supreme freedom is from this and that, I and other, and all that that entails. And now we move to verses discussing the body. Let's see here. Let's just do it one at a time, I think. Who's up? Shini, verse 59.
If, O mind, you will not be aggrieved, when vultures with their love of flesh are tugging at this body all around, why are you so besotted with it now?
Really? And this, this is set in ancient India, but if you were to go to India, at least I went in the 80s, you can find places where bodies, human beings, are being put out for animals to eat. And there are vultures. They're eating those bodies. So this was a common experience for people to see this. And being overly attached to the body is an obstacle to gathering virtue and to not causing harm and to benefiting others. We are so self-absorbed with our bodies. The real question is, with the time we have, and it goes fast, how are we going to spend it? So, who wants to read? Judith. Verse 60.
Okay. Why, O mind, do you protect this body, taking it to be your own? You and it are each a separate entity. However can it be of use to you?
And this is regarding the body as a short-term possession. And you actually don't own, you're just borrowing for a little while, using for a little while. And when it dies, the mind is going to continue. This is the Buddhist teaching. I think I've exhausted all the hands. Anybody else? Shall I call on people? Is that okay?
Hey, John, I can't see verse 58 on.
Oh, sorry.
And I don't think Mark has read.
Yes, he did.
There we go. Oops. Sorry, this is.
I don't mind reading again. If
Okay. Mark?
okay, starting at 59.
Yeah, and then Judith, and we'll go on from there.
Okay. If, O mind, you will not be aggrieved when vultures with their love of flesh are tugging at this body all around, why are you so besotted with it now?
And aren't we just? Illness, vanity, how we look. It just goes on and on. Okay, Judith Journo. Judy, you're muted.
Yeah,
You're-
I thought I just read that one.
oh, you-
Why, O mind, do you protect this body, taking it to be your own? You and it are each a separate entity. However can it be of use to you?
keep going.
Why, O foolish mind, don't you appropriate a clean form carved in wood? How is it fit to guard an unclean engine for the making of impurity?
Yeah. Our bodies are such an impure mess. And it's been a traditional Buddhist contemplation to consider that, that it's actually kind of disgusting, our urine, our feces, and all the blood and guts in us. And so that's what he's referencing here. Better to be attached to a figure carved in wood. It was a traditional meditation on the impurities of the body. But Shantideva wants to free us from obsession, not fill us with loathing. Okay, next 2 verses. Hands up. Don, you had your hand up, didn't you?
Yes. All right. First, with the mind's imagination, shed the covering of skin, and with the blade of wisdom, strip the flesh from off the bony frame. And when you have divided all the bones and searched right down amid the very marrow, you yourself should ask the question, where is the essential core?
And of course, we're just a collection of parts. And if you look at photographs of yourself when you were younger, that person doesn't exist anymore. I mean, you can see the transition, but all these parts are constantly changing. There is no solid, unchanging core. And that's what Shantideva is saying. All right, 64 and 5. I can make this work. Sarah.
If, persisting in the search, you see no underlying essence, why do you protect with such desire the body that you now possess? Its filth you cannot eat, O mind. Its blood likewise is not for you to drink. Its innards too unsuitable to suck. This body, what then will you make of it?
Yeah. So we're being enjoined to contemplate the body changes from infancy to old age in order to shake up our attachments. And it's really, I find it very interesting looking in the mirror, experiencing the effects of old age, watching the acceleration of the deterioration of this body, which it does. I find, and I think for many people from about the age of 70 on, the acceleration happens much more quickly. And yet the mind stays, hopefully. So then he says, a friendly countenance. Is that right? No. If, it's filth you cannot eat, O mind, its blood likewise is not for you to drink, and so forth. Why don't we see the foolishness of being so attached to our bodies? I mean, I've been going through illness right now, and I'm attached to my body, and I should listen to that injunction. The foolishness of it all. Okay. Well, we're back to the cast of original characters. Anybody else would like to read who hasn't read yet? Valerie, Danielle, Henry? No. Nope. All right. We'll go with Carolyn again.
And yet it may indeed be kept as food to feed the vulture and the fox. The value of this human form lies only in the use you make of it.
So the value of this human form is that we can proceed to enlightenment, which is the true appreciation of life in the world. And that is our opportunity. Keep going. Read one more.
I can't see anymore.
Oh, you got to see 60. Oh, there it is. Sorry.
67.
Yep.
Whatever you may do to guard and keep it, what will you do when the ruthless Lord of Death will seize and throw it to the dogs and birds? If servants
No. Okay.
If servants who cannot be set to work are not rewarded with supplies and clothing, why do you sustain with such great pains this body, which, though nourished, will abandon you?
And basically, he's invoking or urging us not to identify with our bodies, that they are just a vehicle that comes and goes. Okay, we're up to 69. Who has their hand up? Carolyn, Philip, and then Chini. Let's see, we'll do 69 and 70.
So pay this body due remuneration, and then be sure to make it work for you. But do not lavish everything on what will not bring perfect benefit. Regard your body as a vessel, a simple boat for going here and there. Make of it a thing that answers every wish to bring about the benefit of beings.
So he's urging us to use the body to work for us in treading the path. It's going to leave us, betray us, and we'll probably take another body. So use this one we've got to benefit ourselves and others. Keep it in good shape because it provides the opportunity for you to accomplish the twofold benefit of self and others. Trungpa Rinpoche always invoked us to take good care of the body because it's the platform from which we can practice and achieve the path. Okay, are we up to 70, I think? Oops. Sorry, this is the Kindle. Just moved. There we go.
71? 70?
We've read 70, right? 71, and let me see here. Let's do 71 and 72. Chini?
Be the master of yourself and have an ever smiling countenance. Rid yourself of scowling, wrathful frowns, and be a true and honest friend to all. Do not act inconsiderately, move chairs and furniture so noisily around. Likewise, do not open doors with violence. Take pleasure in the practice of humility.
One second. Don't move chairs and furniture noisily around. That'll get you in a lot of trouble. And so we gather virtue when we consider how our actions affect those around us. That's what he's really talking about. And having a friendly countenance, that means friendly face, makes those around us feel better. The scowling one worse. And it has a similar effect on oneself. Let's see. Philip, you want to read?
Herons, cats, and burglars achieve what they intend by going silently and unobserved. Such is the constant practice of a sage.
Yeah. So we're being exhorted to move attentively and patiently to accomplish our goals. When we're mindless, we can't tread the path or even realize our worldly goals. So coming back to self-awareness. Let's see, 74, and would you keep reading, Philip? 74?
Sure. When useful admonitions come unsought from those with skill in counseling their fellows, welcome them with humble gratitude and always strive to learn from everyone.
Yeah, sometimes getting feedback from people around us is the only way to discover our blind spots, getting us to look at things we'd rather not see. So we should always strive to learn from everyone, but know that finally we have to rely on our own intelligence. Okay, I'm seeing, should I just call on people, or if you don't raise your hand, I don't want to put you in an awkward position, but I'm going to do it anyhow. Fred, how about you?
Praise all whose speech is worthy. Say, your words are excellent, and when you notice others acting well, encourage them in terms of warm approval.
Yeah. Too often all we hear is criticism. Approval, encouragement, and praise will elicit kindness and happiness in the objects of your speech. How about Sarah again? Reading verse 76.
Sure, please scroll.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
There we go.
Extol their qualities discreetly. When they're praised by others, praise them too. But when the qualities they praise are yours, reflect upon their skill in recognizing qualities.
And enjoy it when you're praised. Yes, that's what he's talking about. So we be happy about the good qualities of others. This takes us out of our self-centeredness and helps those others. When we're praised, let oneself be touched by the other's appreciation and our good qualities. Okay. We'll read the next one. Shinyi, read the next two. 77 and 78.
The goal of every act is happiness itself, though even with great wealth it is rarely found. So take your pleasure in the excellence of others. Let them be a heartfelt joy to you. By acting thus in this life, you will lose nothing. In future lives, great bliss will come to you. Wrongdoing brings not joy but pain, and in the future, dreadful torment.
Yeah. We all want to be happy, but we're betrayed by our own actions. The kleshas, we are triggered into them, anger and hatred and desire and whatever. And they make us unhappy and they make others unhappy around us. And often we're escaping. You know, alcoholism, drugs, but on a much lesser scale, into television entertainments of all kinds. And the way to guarantee happiness is to rejoice in the good qualities of others. An antidote for envy. This will generate warmth and heartfelt joy. When we begin to appreciate the kindness and other good qualities of other people, we find pleasure everywhere. What do you think of that statement? When we begin to appreciate the kindness and other good qualities of other people, we begin to find pleasure for ourselves everywhere. Yeah. Okay, so we're up to 79 and 80. And Carolyn.
Speak coherently, appropriately, clear in meaning, pleasantly. Rid yourself of craving and aversion. Speak gently with moderation. When you look at others, think that it will be through them that you will come to Buddhahood. So look on them with frank and loving hearts.
Yeah. This is mindful speech. Trungpa Rinpoche used to give us elocution lessons. Remember those, Michael? Yeah. My wife at that time, she's passed, was his sister-in-law, and she used to call them electrocution lessons. But they were, the rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing the proper pronunciation, but things like that. But it was all about being aware of and using speech properly. And this is mindful speech. I mean, I have a friend who literally just says almost everything that comes into that person's mind. It's very unsettling, and that's not mindful. Yeah. So mindful speech can be hard. Slowing down our speech can be difficult. We want to race ahead mindlessly. And Shantideva is encouraging us to speak gently and without bias or prejudice. And perhaps even keeping silent. That's another form of speech in a way. All right, let's do verse 80. Yeah, just verse 80. I see Judith has a hand up.
Yes. 80 or 81?
We are on 80.
When you look at others, think that it will be through them that you will come to Buddhahood. So look on them with frank and loving hearts.
Yeah, this is really interesting, that other sentient beings are the cause of our enlightenment. They provide the environment in which we can exercise our sanity as well as our neurosis. So it's through other sentient beings that we're going to come to Buddhahood. So we should look on them with frank and loving hearts. They're the cause of our enlightenment, no matter what reaction they provoke in us, irritation, pain, envy, arrogance, and so on. We can learn the countervailing virtue. When they are suffering, we can learn loving kindness. When they bother us, we learn patience. When they arouse aversion, we can become tolerant and more. This will lead us to Buddhahood. Instead of staying stuck in our selfishness, we extend a hand to someone in distress. Instead of letting jealousy sabotage us, we can train in helping this person rejoice. So I think we're up to 81. And I'm looking at hands up. I'm not calling on a lot of people because you haven't put up a hand. If you would love to read, I would love to hear you. And you can just put up a hand, in the... How's it done, Barry?
There's.
I'll read. I have my hand up. Always fired by highest aspiration, laboring to implement the antidotes, you will reap great virtues in the field of excellence and in the fields of benefits and sorrow.
Right. So the antidotes to the kleshas, we can exercise them. The antidote to anger is patience. Envy is rejoicing in the person's qualities. To lust is recognizing the impurity of the body, and so on. There are different antidotes to the different kleshas. And by employing them, we interrupt the momentum of those kleshas and gather virtue. We cut the storyline and see the energy and watch the energy fade. Shantideva says that we can gather virtue in three ways: from teachers who inspire us, awaken our veneration and devotion and respect, who are examples for us. They're not easy to find, but they're here. In the field of benefits, those who have been kind to us, that can inspire virtue in us. And in the feeling of fields of sorrow, all beings suffer, who suffer, and that will inspire us to kindness and feelings of commiseration. So by relying on our teachers, our benefactors, and those we need, we gather virtues of devotion, gratitude, and kindness. Okay. Judith, journal. You read 82.
Okay. Acting thus with faith and understanding, you should always undertake good works. And in whatever actions you perform, you should not be dependent on another.
So we shouldn't fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to others, the trap of competitiveness. We train an awakening bodhicitta for its own sake, not to be superior. This requires an awful lot of self-awareness. Michael, are you ready to take over?
I am. Could you take down your screen share and I'll put up my Kindle?
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay. This should work. There we go. But before we start, I wanted to read the first verse, the verse that opened this entire chapter on vigilant introspection. Those who wish to keep the trainings must with perfect self-possession guard their minds. Without this guard upon the mind, the trainings cannot be preserved. And the reason the trainings can't be preserved is without taming the mind, without steadying ourselves, it's impossible to develop the clarity and steadiness that we need to develop the paramitas. As you know, it was pointed out in the beginning of this chapter, our minds are easily swayed, caught up in, get lost in the kleshas, and so the ability to be aware of what's in our minds is something that people can do regardless of whether they meditate or not. But to do it with any consistency, with any effectiveness, with any steadiness, the practice of meditation is vital. So we'll begin now talking about the third of the three types of discipline. Again, the first one was not causing harm to others. The second was gathering virtue. And now the third one is actually benefiting beings. And it begins with a discussion of the paramitas. So somebody could read verse 83. You volunteer?
Sure, I'll read it. Perfections, giving, and the rest progress in sequence. Let's see. Oh, sorry, I missed part of it, I think.
I think you got it.
Okay. The perfections, giving, and the rest progress in sequence, growing in importance. The great should never be abandoned for the less, and others' good should be regarded as supreme.
Okay, so the idea here is we're talking about the six paramitas, which are the transcendent actions of the Bodhisattva. And it's through the six paramitas, or by engaging in the six paramitas, which are in essence meditation and action, that a Bodhisattva is able to benefit beings. So the six paramitas, which we read about before, when we read the profound treasury, the path of the Bodhisattva path of wisdom and compassion, are generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, meditation, and prajna. And what's being presented in this verse is they develop one after the other in a sequence, growing in importance. And he says the great should never be abandoned for the less. And the idea here is that as we develop in each paramita, according to the commentary by Kunzang Palden, the higher paramitas have priority over the lower ones. Each paramita in sequence is considered more subtle, more difficult to practice, and generates more merit than the previous one. And it's not ultimately until the sixth paramita or prajna that the paramitas ultimately become actually transcendent action, because we see through the illusion of self and the illusion of other. And so you have, as John was talking about before, the threefold purity that, for instance, with the paramita of generosity, no giver, no gift, and no recipient, so that it's a perfect action because it's not in any way attached to ego or to any kind of illusory distortion of the situation. However, it's also said that the most important thing is that whatever action we consider, whatever action we engage in, the most important thing is whatever is of the benefit to beings. And that's why the last line, and others' good, should be regarded as supreme. Philip, could you read verse 84?
Therefore, understand this well, and always labor for the benefit of beings. The compassionate one farsightedly permits to this end even what has been prescribed.
Okay, so here we're really talking about the importance of earnestly working for the benefit of beings, and that this is or should be free of self-interest. Pema says that basically in regard to this verse, as well as to this entire text, but in particular in regard to this verse, that helping others is more than just a set policy or a code of ethics, and that in some cases we may need to do what would otherwise be prohibited to help others. That's the point about the line about the compassionate one farsightedly permits to this end even what has been prescribed. In other words, that there may be times where it's more skillful to cause a little bit of suffering now to prevent greater suffering in the future. The most important thing, though, the key to it all is what's appropriate to the situation, which is something that we need to figure out for ourselves, because there's no way to just do this on any kind of autopilot. There's no way to do it while we're stuck in ignorance. There's no way to do it while we're caught up in the kleshas, which is why taming the mind, which is, again, one of the key themes throughout this chapter, is so important, so that we're able to rest in awareness and have the ability to discern in a situation what's going to be helpful. Let's see. Henry, could you read verse 85?
Eat only what is needful. Share with those who have embraced the discipline. With those who are defenseless or have fallen into evil states, give everything except the 3 robes of religion.
So here, according to Kunzang Palden's commentary, what Shantideva is talking about here is practice, solitary practice, really, but that the idea is essentially that we eat only what is needful, that we avoid the excess of eating too much, which can lead to dullness, and we avoid the opposite extreme of eating too little, so that we become too weak to practice. And then the idea of sharing with those who embrace with discipline, those who are defenseless, those who have fallen into evil states, are that we should be willing to give really to all beings. In terms of lower realms, that'll primarily mean beings that we can actually see, which would be helping to take care of animals in some way. Although we could imagine offering to beings that we can't see, in terms of the hell realm on the hungry ghost realm. That we want to share with those who have embraced the discipline, who are engaged in practice. And we want to help those be available to give to those who are defenseless, people who, because of poverty or illness or whatever, need some kind of protection. Verses 86 and 87, Pema notes that at this point, again, there's a real shift in terms of the attitude toward the body. And what's happening now is it sort of refers back to, in the verses that John read, what is the value of the body? What use can we make of it? So the earlier verses had to do with cutting through misperceptions of body, cutting through attachment, cutting through pride, cutting through self-preoccupation, which can even take the form of, fairly negative attitudes towards the body, but that by staying self-preoccupied, we're not available to others. So here we're talking about body in the sense of what use we can make of it that's valuable, what use we can make of it in terms of benefiting beings. So let me see. Don, could you read verses 86 and 87?
The body, used to practice sacred teachings, should not be harmed in meaningless pursuits. By acting thus, the wishes of all beings will swiftly and completely be attained. They should not give up their bodies, whose compassionate thoughts are not yet pure, but let them be surrendered when, both now and in their future lives, great benefit is thereby gained.
So again, talking about using body, without attachment to ego, without attachment to pride or infatuation with the body, but just what use we can make of the body, first of all, to practice. And this refers both to how we could use the body in terms of meditation practice, where in a very simple way, we settle into body. We settle into being present because the body is always here wherever our minds might be. And then from a more Mahayana point of view, how we can work with body in terms of benefiting others, what actions we can take that will actually be a benefit to others. Where he says in verse 87, they should not give up their bodies whose compassionate thoughts are not yet pure. He's talking about the total surrender of body that great bodhisattvas have done. And he said, and the point here is that until we've reached that level on the bhumis where we really see the emptiness of self and other, that we shouldn't make an extreme sacrifice of some kind. Because as Kunzang Palden says, as novices, we can't be certain that such action will benefit others because we don't have the mindfulness awareness to really be clear about what's going to be of the greater benefit in a situation like that. Secondly, we need body in order to practice. Just bodies, even in very simple terms of being grounded in the present, and also that we may later regret any kind of sacrifice we make in relation to body. And regret in terms of generous action is not at all helpful to our practice at this point. That regret about generosity actually becomes an obstacle. So therefore, we shouldn't overdo any sense of sacrifice, is the point here, until we're really ready to do it, until we've reached a point where we actually can give without regard to self in a genuine way, not in a forced or conceptual way that isn't really where we're at in terms of our development. Let's see, verses 88 and 89, 88 through 90 really refer to offering the gift of Dharma, how we can teach others. And there are a lot of different themes in these verses in terms of being able to determine or taking the time to discern who would be an appropriate audience, how to present the Dharma in a skillful way, and both what to do and what not to do in offering the teachings. So if Shinyi, could you read verses 88 through 90?
Sure. Do not teach the Dharma to the disrespectful, to those who do not seek wrap clothes around their heads, to those who carry weapons, staffs, or parasols, to those who are with covered heads. To those upon the lower paths, do not explain the vast and deep, nor tutor women unaccompanied by men, and every Dharma, high or low, expound with equal reverence. Those suited to the teachings of great scope should not be introduced to lesser paths. The rules of conduct you should not neglect, nor lead astray with talks of sutras and of mantras.
Okay, so the first point that he makes is we shouldn't teach Dharma to people who don't have respect for the Dharma, that this is not helpful to them, and in fact can create a negativity. As Pema says in the text, that some of the things that in the rest of this verse, though not sick, wrap claws around their heads, those who carry weapons, staffs, or parasols. This refers to certain customs in India. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any real explanation of exactly what these things mean. But altogether, this first verse about offering the gift of Dharma, offering the gift of the teachings, is saying to be mindful of what our audience is and to be certain that we're dealing with people who are actually receptive. I've been trying to think about what it means to in terms of those who not sick wrap clouds around their heads. I don't know if that means something about, that there's an excessive emphasis on comfort, if these are people who just disregard convention and, perhaps are in some way out of touch with reality, if they're deceptive. I really don't know what that means in terms of why you shouldn't teach the Dharma, nor do I understand why it's a problem to carry a parasol. Carry weapons or staffs might refer to, people who are, extremely aggressive and threatening. But I don't really, Pema doesn't really answer. Kunzig Palden doesn't really say much about it either. But I think the main point of this verse is to be aware of the audience and make certain that they're going to be receptive and actually able to listen and make use of whatever it is that we have to present. Verses 89 to 90 first talk about not presenting teachings that are more advanced to people who aren't ready for them. Those upon the lower paths do not explain the vast and deep, refers to such things as the teachings on emptiness. Because these are monks, at that time they were prohibited from being with women who weren't accompanied by men. So again, this to keep in mind, this was Shantideva's audience, and that was the rule at the time. Every Dharma, high or low, expound with equal reverence, refers to having some appreciation of all the Buddha's teachings and not considering some more worthwhile and others less. That the degree to which any particular teaching is valuable really relates to the specific audience that we're dealing with. The metaphor that Kunzig Palden gives for this is it's like talking about the taste of honey and salt. They each have their particular taste, and in terms of cooking, each one would be more or less appropriate based on what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And it's the same with the teaching. So you wouldn't disparage the Hinayana teachings or in some way express that only the Mahayana or Vajrayana is worthwhile and the Hinayana is not. It expounded all with equal reverence. He also says in verse 90 that if we're dealing with people who are capable of understanding the higher teachings, that they shouldn't be confused by teachings of the lesser paths, that this could fetter wisdom and confuse their faith. And then the rules of conduct you should not neglect refers to the importance of the teachings of karma and cause and effect. And in regard to this, Kunzig Palden says, aside from exceptional situations in which the profound view should be explained, in other words, if you do have an audience capable of understanding higher teachings, aside from exceptional situations in which the profound view should be explained, it's essential to set forth the law of karma in relation to virtuous and non-virtuous actions. And again, that's one of the key themes in this chapter, is that the importance of developing vigilant introspection, the importance of developing mindfulness awareness, the importance of being aware of what's going on in our minds and what actions we're actually taking, is so that we know what to engage in and what not to engage in, or what Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, what to accept and what to reject. And that this is based not on any kind of policy or abstract rule. It's based on clear perception of what's happening and what, how we're feeling, and an understanding of what will happen if we engage in certain actions, which brings benefit and which actions bring harm. And then finally, not lead astray with talk of sutras and mantras. What he means by that is that it's important in teaching to make sure that people understand that it's not enough just to recite or read, that it's of importance to really apply the teachings in terms of one's actual life, in terms of one's actual living situation. So verses 91 through 96, it's an interesting title in Kunzuk Palden's commentary. It says that these next set of verses have to do with the avoidance of giving scandal to others, which in particular means that we should not act in a way that causes others to fall or causes others to lose faith. So that it's kind of interesting to read through these, because it's not simply a matter of just being good manners because Miss Manners or Emily Post said so. It's because our behavior has an effect on others, and our ability to be an example to others, and our ability to manifest mindfulness awareness to others is shown through our conduct, how we actually behave. So all of these in various ways, verses 91 through 96, refer to ways in which we can actually benefit others by conducting ourselves with mindfulness and awareness and discipline, by being mindful of simple details, by being an example of mindfulness, gentleness, and a sense of general awareness of the world around us. By benefiting others by not adding to the coarseness or unhealthiness of the world, and by not leading others into non-virtue by, in some way, acting in a way that encourages some kind of improper behavior. So if you keep that in mind, I think it's easier to understand what Shantideva is trying to get at in the next set of verses. And again, I think some of the examples that he gives relate specifically to medieval India, and we could actually think about it a little bit. And just as when you read a poem or any kind of metaphorical, literature, you can actually generalize to other situations that may be more applicable to ourselves. I think that's how we should read this next set of verses. So if someone could, let's see, I don't see everyone's, actually interested in reading. Dan, could you read verses 91 and 92?
Sure. When you spit and throw away your toothsticks, you should cover them, and it is wrong to foul with urine and with other filth. The fields and water fit for public use. When eating, do not gobble noisily, nor stuff and cram your gaping mouth, and do not sit with legs outstretched, nor coarsely rub your hands together.
So, in regard to the first verse, Pema quotes Dzongzar Rinpoche as saying that that even in India today, they still don't adhere to what Shantideva teaches in terms of what is wrong to do in terms of relating to the environment. But again, I think with each of these verses, he's really talking about how we could manifest with a sense of mindfulness awareness that shows in our behavior, our conduct, and how this can be helpful to others. Or again, prevent others from losing faith in us and losing faith in the practice. Let's see. Judith, could you read verses 93 through 96?
Sure. Do not travel, sit or stay alone with women of another house, and all that you have seen or have been told to be a cause of scandal, that you should avoid. Not rudely pointing with your finger, but rather with a reverent gesture showing with the whole right hand outstretched. This is how to indicate the road. Do not wave your arms with uncouth gestures. Express yourself instead with unobtrusive signs, with gentle sounds and finger snaps, for acting otherwise is impolite excess. Lie down to sleep in the preferred direction, in the posture of the Buddha when he passed into nirvana. And first, with vigilance, decide that you'll be quick to rise again.
Okay, so actually the last verse again refers to relating mindfully in terms of our behavior, in particular in terms of sleeping and waking. The posture of the Buddha when he passed into nirvana, if you've ever seen a picture of the reclining Buddha in Thailand, that basically when the Buddha passed into nirvana, he laid down on his right side with his right hand under his head and left arm outstretched on his legs, and that's how he passed into nirvana. And the sense here is that we could actually at least at first go to sleep that way and actually settle into our bodies, settle into awareness, and begin to relax, let go as we fall asleep. It doesn't mean we need to hold that posture the whole time, but this is what's recommended. And then on the other side, when we wake up in the morning, to begin with a sense of mindfulness again, decide that we'll be quick to rise and actually engage with the world around us. So basically, I think of this as like being mindful about transitions in our life, not just going into things in a mindless way, but actually, again, approaching transitions in life with some sense of mindfulness and awareness. Verses 97 and 98, again, refer to overall the actions of Bodhisattva. So, you see, Sarah, could you read verses 97 and 98?
Sure. The actions of the Bodhisattva are unbounded, so the teachings say. Of these, until the goal is won, embrace the practices that purify your mind. Reciting thrice by day and thrice by night. The sutra in 3 sections, relying on the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, purify the rest of your transgressions.
Okay, so basically the idea of the actions of the Buddhas are unbounded means that that they're not bound to any kind of convention, any kind of rule. And yet at the same time, we're enjoined to maintain some decorum in our conduct in whenever and wherever that's appropriate. So it's and then also we should maintain the practices that purify. The sutra. The sutra in 3 sections is basically a practice text that emphasizes confession, praise of virtue or rejoicing, and dedication of merit. And again, the idea is that over and over again, we examine our actions, and where we find that we've done something that that we later regret, that we practice confession, as was shown in the chapter 2, I think, of this text, so that we're able to let go of negative patterns and negative habitual patterns. Okay, so verse 99. Mark, could you read verse 99?
Yes. Wherever and whenever and whatever you are doing, for your sake or the sake of others, implement with diligence the teachings given for that situation.
So basically what we're enjoined to do, and this is, again, if we're talking about what to accept and what to reject, this is what to accept, that whatever we do should be done with mindfulness awareness, and that we can apply whatever teaching is helpful in any particular given situation, whatever that might be, whatever reminders, slogans, whatever we might, bring to a situation for meditation practice. And that, again, it's important to make a connection between the teachings and our actual experience. Kunzang Palden actually relates this verse to some of the specific verses in the that preceded this in the chapter. That, for instance, when walking, he connects with verse 37, which related to looking all around and generally having some awareness of your environment. When you verse 80, when you're with others, see others as how you will come to Buddhahood. So we should look on them with a loving heart. There are verses that relate to what we should do when eating. In other words, not to eat in a mindless way, but again, shows, with some conduct and mindfulness, what we should do when sleeping. But in any case, the important thing here is that we're able to, as we develop in our practice, increasingly discern what's appropriate in a situation, what's helpful, what would bring benefit, and as well as what to avoid, because we realize that it will bring harm. Carolyn, could you read verse 100?
Yes. There is indeed no field of knowledge that the Buddha's offspring should not learn. For those who are well versed in all these ways, there is no action destitute of merit.
In regard to this verse, Pema actually brings up Trungpa Rinpoche as an example and all the many, many things that he was curious about and engaged in. Poetry, filmmaking, art, calligraphy, archery, horseback riding, theater, psychology, all the different, and that's not even an exhaustive list. But the idea is that as bodhisattvas, we're willing to learn about anything and everything that could be helpful in terms of helping us to be of benefit to beings, brings understanding to beings, and that as we progress in our practice, at a certain point, all actions actually become virtuous because they're done without reference to self. They're done without reference to ego. And instead they're performed with a sense of mindfulness and awareness. Let's see. Don, could you read verse 101?
Directly then, or indirectly, do nothing that is not for others' sake. And solely for their welfare, dedicate your every action to the gaining of enlightenment.
So again, this is just summing up what our intention, our motivation, our aspiration is here. Directly and indirectly, this refers back to what John spoke about earlier about the two benefits, benefit to self and benefit to other, that we benefit beings directly through our actions of body and speech, and indirectly through our practice. And that whatever we do, we avoid doing anything that isn't for others' sake. And that we always dedicate merit to this, to the benefit of all beings, and to the gaining of enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. Let's see. Mark, could you read verses 102 and 103?
Yes. Never at the cost of life or limb forsake your virtuous friend, your teacher, learned in the doctrine of the Mahayana, supreme in Bodhisattva discipline. Learn how to attend upon your guru, as described in Shri Sambhavista's life, this and other teachings of the Buddha. You should understand by reading in the sutras.
So these two verses talk about the importance of devotion and appreciation of the teacher and the teachings, and the importance of relying on the support of the spiritual friend. Pema points out that it's the first time in this text where Shantideva actually uses the term Mahayana, with the path of wisdom and compassion. It's also important to understand that in verse 103, that what he's talking about is how we should regard the teacher, and that the reference to Sri Sambhava's life is, which you can read about in the footnote, but the basic idea is seeing the teacher as being like a physician or a doctor, ourself as being ill in some way, which is essentially the illness of the kleshas, and that the teachings is medicine that will cure us. let's see. Henry, could you read verses 104 through 106?
Indeed, within these sutras, all the practices are found. Therefore, read and study them. The Sutra of the Essence of the Sky is the text that should be studied first. All that must be practiced constantly is clearly and extensively explained within the digest of all disciplines. So this is something you should read repeatedly. From time to time, for sake of brevity, consult the digest of the sutras. And those two works peruse with diligence that noble Nagarjuna has composed.
So both the footnote and Pema in her commentary note that some of these, these very teachings that Shantideva asked us to read have been lost in time. But the general idea that we could take from it is that we should study the Dharma, and that we should not only study the Dharma, but we should do it again and again. Read repeatedly, as it says in the verse. And that this is important both to understand, both to develop an understanding, but also because reading the Dharma encourages us. It helps us understand what we're doing and encourages us to go further. Let's see. Shinyi, could you read verse 107?
Whatever in these works is not prescribed, be sure to undertake and implement, and what you find enjoined there perfectly fulfill, and so protect the minds of worthy beings.
Basic idea is whatever Shantideva said we shouldn't do, we could do and should do, again, with the goal of protecting beings, helping beings. So then we'll conclude, he concludes, and we'll conclude with final two verses, 108 and 109. Dan, could you read them?
Examining again and yet again the state and actions of your body and your mind. This alone defines in brief the maintenance of watchful introspection. But all this must be acted out in truth, for what is to be gained by mouthing syllables? What invalid was ever helped by merely reading the doctor's treatises?
So again, in summary, we're once again reminded of the importance of examining again and again, by which means maintaining a sense of mindfulness and awareness about the state and actions of body and mind. That this, in brief, is the action we want to take with the maintenance of watchful introspection. And then, so we want to maintain mindfulness and awareness and alertness. And this should be combined with knowing what to accept and what to reject. That we want to, just as in meditation practice, we want to recognize distraction and come back. When we recognize the kleshas, be like a log when we realize we're hooked. And then, as he says in verse 109, that we actually need to do this. We actually need to apply this. We need to work with this. That it's not helpful just to talk about it, but we actually have to do it. We actually have to work with this in terms of our actual in-the-moment experience. And so this is about all I have to say about this chapter, or this last section of the chapter. I'll only say one more thing, though. Is the next chapter, Patience, is all about working with anger and overcoming aggression through the practice of patience. And everything that Shantideva describes in terms of how to work with aggression is based first on being able to recognize our state of mind. So you can really see how this paramita of discipline really is the foundation for being able to overcome aggression. And that would be, I think, become really clear as we study the next chapter. So with that, I am finished, and we have a little bit of time for any kind of question or comment if people would like. Well, maybe we should examine our minds and to practice vigilant introspection. I don't know.
Here's a picture of the lying flat Buddha, if anybody wants to see it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Um,
Judith, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I noticed that I'm taking so much of this as a scold. How does one avoid feeling like a naughty girl?
Well, I think the first thing is exactly what you did. You're seeing that happen.
Yeah.
That's the first step. And then, as with everything else, it's a matter of seeing that that's what's happening and relaxing with that, looking at that, analyzing that. That to see ourselves that way, because, and believe me, I fall into the same thing. We have to have some fixed idea of who I am and then decide I don't like that. And all of that's illusory. All of that we can see through. We can realize this is a pattern, and that it's, at least in my experience, it's not a helpful pattern because it either causes me to become discouraged,
Yes,
or to go from one extreme to the other. And none of those things are actually helpful. So I think the very first thing is seeing it and understanding what it is, and having some sense of that however we're able to see it, whatever it is in us that's able to do that, is actually free of that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see it. We'd still be identifying with the pattern and be lost in it. And so it's possible, I think, to relax at that point and maybe even just look at it and, let go to some extent.
Yeah.
I don't know if that.
It feels like a mountain to be moved.
For me, it's always important to keep in mind that he wrote this to himself. He presented something he wrote to himself, and in advance, and he asked them, permission to make something new that they had never heard. He had been writing this to himself all along. Yeah.
As well as to all the monks who heard him, would hear him. I think that, again, the beginning really is just through the practice of meditation, developing our ability to be self-aware in the sense of, and our ability to let go, relax, to see through.
Philip has his hand raised.
Yeah, you have to be kind to yourself. You'll never be able to be compassionate to others unless or until you're compassionate to yourself first. It's critically important.
Yeah, it's 9:00, so we should really end. Do we have someone to do the closing chant? I can't remember who.
I was going to do them, if that's okay.
All right, that's fine. Okay, so we should close. So I will put up the chants. But we have discussion group tomorrow night, so come back and we can. These are important things, and I.
By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, May the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.